Today we will look at two worldviews, contrary to the Bible, but also we will discover contrary to themselves, evolution and Islam. As you prepare to engage with these worldviews, whether the secular evolutionist or the devout Muslim, remember that your goal is to expose the internal inconsistency of their presuppositions. Evolution relies on the blind creating the seeing. Islam relies on a confirmation that contradicts what it confirms. We stand firm on the consistency of the Christian revelation. Let's start with the philosophical failure of evolutionary theory. Evolutionists cannot get away from talking about personal attributes in what they call nature. When Christians or anti-evolutionists cross-examine the arguments and evidence for evolution, they often ask, how can you expect nature to have been so creative as to do these various things? How could blind, random chance have accomplished such complexity? The comeback from the secularists is often, well, maybe nature is more creative than you thought. They speak of natural selection. But we must pause and ask the obvious question, blind forces do not select anything, do they? I find it fascinating that when I was studying logic years ago, the illustration I was given for the fallacy of reification was specifically regarding how people speak of nature. Reification is the turning of a set of unconnected events into a personal form. It makes a concrete substance out of something that is abstract. When Bill Clinton was elected, people said, the winds of change are blowing. Now, the winds of change is a reification of events. There is no actual wind. It is a figure of speech. Yet, when this is taken seriously and used in an argument, it becomes a fallacy. You are treating an abstract personification as though it were a concrete entity. Evolutionists repeatedly commit this fallacy. They talk about what nature does, the creativity it possesses, and the selection that takes place. Whenever they explain their theory, they use analogies to animal breeders. The problem should be obvious. There is no animal breeder for the whole world, unless, of course, you are a Christian. That is precisely the notion they are trying to escape. The notion of a purposeless natural process which by chance developed mutations that gradually changed life forms is a theory that has been discredited philosophically and scientifically. Why then does your neighbor hold to it? Why do university professors cling to it? It is helpful to understand the history. The theory of evolution did not arise with Charles Darwin, nor did it arise with scientists. It arose with philosophers. Anaximander, an early Greek philosopher, was an evolutionist. The notion of gradual change accounting for the world was already in the philosophical ether, thanks to Hegel, long before Darwin wrote. Karl Marx, who turned Hegel on his head to teach dialectical materialism, actually sought to dedicate Das Kapital to Darwin. Science merely gave this philosophy a cosmetic of respectability. As Darwin's bulldog, Thomas Huxley, admitted, they encountered a barrier in the natural world labeled no further exploration by order of Moses. Darwin simply gave them a way around that barrier. Therefore, evolution is not good science. It is desire-motivated speculation. It is a worldview held to avoid the doctrine of special creation by a personal God. Now, is there an internal critique we can make of this worldview? Yes. The evolutionary worldview asks us to believe a sequence of impossibilities. Once there was disorder, and for reasons unknown, it became ordered. This ordered matter was inorganic, and for reasons unknown, it became living. This living matter, made of identical forms, began to diversify. These diversified forms became varied but remained unintelligent. Then the unintelligent became intelligent and articulate. The articulate became language using but not moral. Finally, for reasons they cannot explain, these language using forms became moral men. At every step, this is a huge leap of faith. from a quality becoming its opposite without explanation. Matter is not intelligent, yet we are to believe matter evolved into intelligence. This is not a rational worldview. It is a worldview of contradictory faith. It apes the Christian story of creation, but strips the Creator of credit. If you are enjoying my videos, please remember to like and subscribe. Hit the share button to help me share these teachings with others. Thank you kindly. And now let's continue with part 2, the challenge of Islam. We now turn from the philosophical and scientific attacks to a religious attack on Christianity. I have chosen the toughest religious illustration to answer: Islam. Approximately 1 out of 5 people in the world is Muslim. It is a rising demographic and geopolitical force, yet missionary outreach to this world is meager. We must understand that the rage often directed against the West by Islamic fundamentalists is rooted in a clash of worldviews. As scholars like Bernard Lewis have noted, to the Muslim fundamentalists, the West represents the enemies of God. Their worldview mandates Islamic rule. They believe that troops fight for God. While Christian ethics suggest people should be free to hear the gospel and choose to follow Jesus, the Islamic worldview does not grant that freedom. To engage in apologetics with a Muslim, you must perform an internal critique of their authority. The pillar of Islam is that there is one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Most Christians know of the Quran, but few are aware that the Hadith, the sayings and acts of Muhammad, is often considered equally authoritative for interpretation. If you read the Hadith, you encounter the superstitious nature of this infallible record. It claims Adam was 90 feet tall. It claims that if you fall asleep while praying, Satan urinates in your ears. It claims the sex of a child is determined by which partner reaches climax first. You must bring these points up, not to ridicule, but to ask, do you really believe this is inspired? I am trying to understand your worldview. Furthermore, we must look at the Quran itself. Muhammad claimed the Quran confirms previous revelations, the Bible, yet the Quran is filled with historical errors regarding those very revelations. It confuses Miriam, the sister of Moses, with Mary, the mother of Jesus, claiming Mary is the sister of Aaron. It claims Haman, from the book of Esther, worked for Pharaoh in Egypt. It denies the crucifixion of Jesus, Surah 4, a historical fact accepted by virtually all historians, secular or religious. Here is the devastating internal critique. The Quran claims to be the continuation and confirmation of the Bible, the law of Moses, the Psalms, and the Gospel. It commands Muslims not to be divided against Moses and Jesus. Yet, the theology of the Quran utterly repudiates the theology of the Bible. 1. The nature of God. The Quran denies the Trinity and the sonship of God, calling it blasphemy. 2. Asam, the method of salvation. The Bible teaches that God is never at peace with sinners apart from blood atonement. The Quran offers no vindication of God's holiness through atonement. Rather, Allah's mercy is predicated on your good works, simply outweighing your bad ones. If the Quran is the confirmation of previous revelation, it cannot contradict that revelation, yet it conflicts historically, theoretically, and morally. Finally, there is a philosophical kill shot for the Islamic worldview known as the doctrine of Yakun Tanzih. This doctrine states that Allah is so transcendent, so unlike anything in our changing world, that no human language can positively describe him. If that is true, if no human language can describe Allah, then what is the Quran? The Quran is a book written in human language claiming to reveal Allah. By their own doctrine, such a revelation is impossible. When pressed with these contradictions, the Muslim has one final defense. The Bible is corrupted. Note carefully, this is an arbitrary claim. It is special pleading advanced without evidence simply to save their theory from contradiction. In apologetics, we do not allow arbitrariness. If their only defense against the contradiction between the Quran and the Bible is a conspiracy theory about the text of the Bible, they have abandoned the realm of evidence and reason. Thank you for listening. Peace go with you.